Alongside of Mandy is a living legend. A living legend whose legend will live long after other living legends have long since lagged. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in falling to your knees and adopting the traditional "we are not worthy" position for the one, the only, Mr. Peter Brock. Rocky, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I thought I got it right.
Now, I've got to ask you something. This has been sort of on my mind now ever since I was but a small child. What on earth possessed you to put a Holden engine in an Austin A30?
It was a rather bizarre notion, I must admit, but I started off with the idea that maybe I'd put a B-series MG engine in, and that was a reasonable thing. And then I thought, well, big is better. And then someone said to me, look, we fit one of those grey Holden motors. I thought, well, maybe, yeah. And I walked into the wrecking yard, and I went to a place called Sturt Auto Wreckers in Wagga. And I walked along. Here's an Austin A30 body shell, which I chose because of its aerodynamic efficiency and classic good looks and $15 price tag. And there next to it was a almost then new HD 179 with severe body damage, but mechanically absolutely spot on. It had the 179 cubic inch motor, which everyone knows was absolutely like so fast and so powerful. It should have been banned for human consumption. And there it was, the decision was made, and somehow I shoehorned this motor in, and it was a disgraceful thing to do, but gee, did it go.
The annual all-historic Mallala is promoted and run by the Sporting Car Club of South Australia. Located in a remarkable classic piece of Adelaide architecture, just a stone's throw from the heart of Adelaide, the club was established in 1934, making the group the second oldest continually running car club in the world. The club runs both hill climbs at the famous Collinggrove track in the Barossa Valley and the South Australian State Racing Series, split between Mallala and the new circuit at the Bend. A highlight of any visit to the club rooms is its astonishing library, the largest of its type in Australia and one of the best in the world. Almost every major motoring and motorsport magazine or book ever produced in Australia is here, all bound and ready to read by members on regular library open days. You name it, it's here. You want to find out who won the Formula V feature race at Calder in March 1971? No problem. It'll be here. And wow, what an amazing setting. I could have stayed here for days. But back to the track. The historic sports sedan races at Mallala also played host to some interesting invited cars. This wild IMSA Mazda RX-7 has no local racing history, but in the USA it raced at some of the great circuits and great races of the world.
G'day, I'm Bruce Coombe. I'm driving a 1987 IMSA-bodied Mazda with a 20B naturally aspirated peripheral port engine. We run a 5-speed G-Force dog box gearbox and a Winters quick change rear. So it was built for Daytona over in Florida, and was built for 12-hour races. So it makes about 420 horsepower, which is not as much as a lot of the 20Bs are making these days, but it's a durable unit. It's got a lot of it's a tough running gear. It's got big hubs on it, and it's got 4 oil coolers. It stays nice and cool, so you can belt it all day, and it just keeps on going. Well, that's the plan.
And so say all of us.
The cars are an evolution from the 13B. They put the 20B in them. That's a Roger Mandeville body car. He built 5 cars in Florida, and they were never really successful against the V8 cars. The Roush cars, blew them away. So it wasn't until 1990, when they put the 4-rotor engine in these cars, that they became more competitive. They had over 600 horsepower, and they actually won the 91 championship. So this car in particular was really a stepping stone to their later more successful car. It's a great car. You revs to 9,000. It's very close in the gears. Got good brakes on it. Got 6-spot brakes front and rear. It probably is a bit heavy for an Aussie sports sedan, But no, it steers nice and it's a noisy thing. The worst thing about it is your ears ring when you get out of it. The car was imported in 2015 and the guy that I bought it from, it sat in the shed for a while, and he bought another car and he was deciding whether he should, which he should race, and I came along and said, well, look, I reckon I can restore it, and I spent 12 months restoring it, and yeah, here we are. We like to run at this meeting because it's a great, it's like a country atmosphere out here at Mallala, and everyone's sort of got their egos in place, and yeah, we have a bit of fun.
Quite clearly the Mazda doesn't fit the regular Group U historic sports sedan rules, so how does it come to get a start here, and where does it fit into the local historic scene?
It's an invited car because it not being an Australian built car, it's not a Group U sports sedan, but it could be logbooked as a Group R sports car. So, but Simon Fitzner, who puts this show together, loves the car and seems to think it fits in. So yeah, we run it here.
The flexibility of the race organisers here at Mallala to allow such cars into the race certainly made for a much better show. And with cars like this, sometimes running them exactly as they raced back in the day is not only dangerous, it's impractical.
In the 21st century, we've got a lot of improvement in brake pads and brakes and tyres, and so it's an evolution of things whether you want it or not. So to be able to run the car like you did back in the early 80s would be impossible anyway. So, a little bit of flexibility there would go a long way into bringing more cars out. You quite understand that, this is actually a group of people that are looking for fun, and they're probably trying to relive that era, but not relive it, to the nth degree or anything.
The Mazda has significant international history and will no doubt be very popular with Rotary fans everywhere. So where else can we see the car in 2021?
We've been invited to Winton, Wakefield Park, Sydney Motorsport Park and Morgan Park up there at Warwick. So you should be able to get to at least 2 or 3 of those meetings along the way, yeah.
The largest, most prestigious historic meeting in Australia is still, of course, the annual Phillip Island Historic Meeting in March. Would Bruce like to see cars like his invited to compete there? Of course he would.
It would be great at Phillip Island because of such a flowing circuit. And I reckon, we've got 24 cars here today and, little old Adelaide. So I think if you did something like that, you'd be surprised how many cars you might just get at an event like that. So yeah, it'd be great to run it. Victoria and down at Phillip Island. It's a great meeting, fantastic meeting. It's one of the best.
So if you send a message to IMSA, the Victorian Historic Racing Register, and the people behind the Phillip Island Racing and also Historic Sandown, what would it be?
Come on, Tatey, have a look at what we're doing, and we're all pretty safe, and we the cars are very well presented, and they're a lot of fun, and they're loved by the crowd.
You're watching In Pit Lane on Channel 31 Melbourne and the In Pit Lane YouTube channel. When we come back, we'll catch up with Bill Hemming to talk about Elfin, one of South Australia's greatest sporting exports. And we'll chat with motorsport legend Spencer Martin about his new book. Don't go away, we'll be right back. South Australia has had a long and proud motorsport tradition. Not only was it the site of the first Australian Grand Prix for World Championship points, but it played host to the American Le Mans Series. It was also home to some of Australia's most successful racing car manufacturers, like Barana, and the most successful of all, Elfin. Bill Hemming is probably Australia's most passionate Elfin enthusiast. The owner of the Elfin Heritage Centre in Melbourne, Bill had 2 cars at Mallala, which saw a rare gathering of the only 3 Elfin MR8 Formula 5000s ever made.
Look, the Mallala Historics has been a long time been my favourite meeting. It's such a laid-back picnic meeting, beautifully organised and that. And this year we thought we'd get a group of 5000s together. It's been a while since we've been here. And actually managed to get hold of Sam Shahin, who of course owns Mallala, to get his Elfin MR8 out, and which is the first time he's actually run that in anger as such. And we finished up getting 7 5000s, which is a good figure. But most importantly, for the first time ever, we had the 3 Elfin MR8s together on the one track, and that was a milestone. It was just terrific. There was the original one that Gary Cooper and John Bow and Didier Peroni raced. Then the second one, which is mine, was Vern Schuppen's car that he took to America and ran it in Can-Am, and now it's back here. And the third car was the car that James Hunt famously won his only Formula 5000 race, and the last race he ever won. So they're three very significant cars, and they're the only three MR8s made, so it was a fantastic coup to get them here.
Also on hand at the meeting were two Elfin 400 sports cars, the Mark Goldsmith Globe Ford-powered car and Bill's own car, built for Bob Jane and raced by some very famous drivers.
The car was built for Bob Jane. It was the first non-Brabham car to get a Repco Brabham engine, and it won the Victorian Sports Car Championships with Jane. Alan Moffat raced it, but most famously Spencer Martin ran it, and it was one of his favourite cars, which he's just signed the book and signed the car to say, which is great. It was also the car which unfortunately Bevan Gibson was killed in at Bathurst, and Spencer said he was supposed to be driving it at that race, but he was double booked with other cars, so he missed out, and young Bevan Gibson, who was Spencer's flatmate actually at the time, killed himself coming down Conrod Straight, and it flipped and unfortunately caught fire and killed him instantly. So it's had a checkered history, a glorious history and a tragic history.
Elfin was also Australia's most successful race car manufacturer. They even made a few road cars, but South Australia was also home to several other marques, although all were influenced by Elfin and Gary Cooper.
Well, interestingly, the Barana and the Escada, those famous South Australian cars, were all built by ex-Elfin employees, right? who couldn't afford to stay working at Elfin because Elfin couldn't afford to pay them properly. I don't know. As far as Gary Cooper went, he wasn't a trained engineer. He just read magazines and copied design influences from around the world, but he's just got it right. And I think importantly, he and his bodybuilder, a bloke called John Webb, who died last year, they just made their cars absolutely beautiful. Very well built, very strong and good looking. So that's why they took off.
Bill Hemming is a self-confessed Elfin tragic, and he's turned his passion into Australia's only dedicated Elfin museum.
I just felt in Australia it's a funny place. Unless you kick a footy or hit a tennis ball, no one cares. But people like Gary Cooper and Jack Brabham, in any other country in the world, there'd be bronze statues of them everywhere, right? And so I was just a bit pissed off actually that Gary Cooper wasn't recognised for what he was. He was within the racing circles, of course, but the great unknown he wasn't. So I established the Elfin Heritage Centre as a dedication to Gary's achievements. And it had a terrific launch, and it's been popular with visitors for the last 15 years we've been going now. So we've got a changing display of about 20 Elfin cars there, and a lot of memorabilia and that. And there's over 400 members in the Elfin Owners and Drivers Club. So there's a very strong following for the whole thing.
Australian racing legend Spencer Martin was the patron of the event. A keen fan of historic racing, Martin has written a brand new book focusing on some of the famous cars he's driven over the years. And Mallala gave him the opportunity to reacquaint himself with one of his favourites, the Elfin 400.
I drove the Elfin 400 here when it was new for Bob Jane, and I spent 2 years in Melbourne driving Bob's cars, 66 and 67, and then I had to get a real job. Now, there was no money in motor racing in those days, so I got a real job, and then after a while I started to race historic cars overseas, and I raced in England and France and Germany, Monaco, and then the USA at Laguna Seca. So I did all those things, and it's all in this book. So it's really, not only is it a history of my racing career, it's also a history of motor racing in Australia and historic racing overseas. The cars that you remember mostly are the cars you won in, of course. And I started off in Holdens. The Holden, we had 20 starts and I won 17 races in that. And then the Brabham I drove for Bob Jane. I won 2 Australian championships with that car, and that was a really good car. And Bob did all the right things. I had a really good car, and I drove drove the 400 as well for Bob, but then when I went overseas, I drove mainly Ferraris. Ferraris, Maseratis, Alphas, Jaguars. I drove a variety of cars. Alfa Romeo, I drove a beautiful T33 Alpha. Yeah, drove lots, and some of these cars are worth millions of dollars now, you know, 20 or 30 million dollars. Anyway, I had the pleasure of driving them when they were up for racing. Well, now they're museum pieces.
After a lifetime of motorsport at the highest level, is Spencer still as passionate about modern motorsport?
No, not really. No, really. I think it's changed so much. It's mainly a race of batteries these days, and I think, well, you know, the skill's still got to be there. In my estimation, the car's always 80%. And but the driver's got to contribute at least 20%, and so the skill's definitely still needed. But I think I've lost a bit of interest in it because it's become the cost involved in it is ridiculous, and the hybrid systems they got are, you know, I mean, they might eventually get passed down to passenger cars, but the technology that goes in them is costing millions and millions of dollars, and you can get 500 and 600 blokes in a team working on two cars. So I think it's gone over the top a bit. Even Bernie Eccleston said it's time they stopped all this technology and just got back to straight V8s and get back to show business more than technology.
You're watching In Pit Lane. Don't go away. We'll be right back. The show may be over, but the motorsport chat continues with Full Course Yellow, the In Pit Lane after party. We're on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel live most Thursday nights at 9:30, straight after In Pit Lane here on Channel 31. So, why not join us? Well, that's about all we have time for this week on In Pit Lane. Once again, thank you to everybody at Mallala for a great weekend of motor racing. It was a terrific weekend, and really, if you get the opportunity to head there next year, do go along. It was a really fun weekend of motor racing, really the tonic that we needed. And once again, thanks to the Sporting Car Club of South Australia, and of course Mark Goldsmith, who helped make that all possible for us. If you're wondering about the nostalgia at the start of the program, well, yes, it is indeed. 25 years ago this week that the first edition of In Pit Lane actually did go to air. And as you can see, yes, I still have the shirt, and yes, it does still fit. Just wanted to take this opportunity to say a huge thank you to everybody who's made this possible. 25 years is a long time for anything in the world. It's certainly a long time in television, and I'd like to say thank you to all of the army of volunteer crew from RMITV Student Television. We've had over 300 people over the years have been a part of the In Pit Lane family. Some have come in for 1 or 2 episodes. Some have come in and have been with us for the best part of 2 decades or more. And I just want to say thank you so much for all your assistance over the years. Thank you also to the staff at RMIT University, particularly the television studio there, all the TV techs and everybody for helping us out and making it possible for us to play in what is the best television playground in the country, without a doubt. So thank you very much to RMIT University for all your support as well, and of course everybody at Channel 31. Of course, the biggest thanks, of course, go to you, our viewers, the people who have been watching for many years. Of course, the person who I suppose is most responsible for getting us through this 25 years, is particularly getting me through this period, unfortunately is not here to see this moment. This weekend is a very sad weekend. It marks 2 years since I lost my very special friend Melissa, and I know that she would be very proud of this moment. And I, of course, dedicate this program, as I dedicate all programs, to the memory of Melissa McCormack. I miss you desperately, and I'm certainly thinking about you every second of every day. So thank you. Melissa loved music, and it's appropriate, therefore, that tradition dictates that we go out with a bit of music, some live music from the Tune Up, our weekly weekly live music session that we have at the Mr Boogie Man Bar at 160 Hoddle Street, Collingwood. And last week we were joined by a fabulous group, the Mason Boys, and they're going to take us out tonight with a song to say, basically, welcome to the country. So until we see you next week again for the start of the 25th year of In Pit Lane, this is the Mason Boys and welcome to the country. Good night.
Oh,